The wind off the Atlantic carried a sharp, briny bite as it swept across the parking lot outside Naval Support Base Sentinel Harbor. It wasn't the kind of gentle coastal breeze vacationers romanticized. This one cut straight through fabric, stinging any skin foolish enough to face it. The early morning haze hung low, blurring the edges of the base's massive perimeter fence and giving the scene a quiet, ghostly feel. Only the steady hum of the floodlights overhead broke the silence. Through that haze, a silver sedan glided up the narrow road like a lone figure arriving late to a ceremony no one remembered inviting them to. Its tires crunched on gravel as it slowed to a controlled stop at the main checkpoint. Inside the booth, Petty Officer Langley barely glanced up from his half-filled crossword puzzle. Another transfer, probably late, probably paperwork. He'd seen hundreds like her. The car door opened with a muted click, and a woman stepped out, bracing herself against the relentless wind. She paused for just a heartbeat, the hood of her faded navy sweatshirt lifting slightly with the gusts as she slung a heavy duffel across her shoulder. The strap dug into her palm, but she didn't flinch. She simply adjusted her grip with the calm of someone who carried heavier burdens far more often. Her jeans were worn, boots scuffed from miles that left their marks in more ways than one. No uniform. No rank pins, no insignia, nothing about her screamed authority. In fact, everything about her seemed deliberately forgettable. Soft features, quiet posture, calm steps, but the pale blue in her eyes, sharpened by the cold light, betrayed decades of discipline others couldn't dream of. Langley took her ID with the practiced laziness of someone who'd rather be asleep. He glanced at the name, Monroe Lee, civilian contractor, logistics. He muttered aloud, though he didn't really read it. He barely flicked his eyes toward her before waving her through. "You're good." Behind him, two Marines leaned against the concrete barrier, steaming styrofoam cups warming their hands as they shared jokes between themselves. Another logistics transfer, one of them snorted. "Hope she files faster than the last one. That dude took 20 minutes to locate a stapler. Bro, this place collects logisticians the way kids collect Pokemon." The other laughed. "Every month it's another one." Their laughter followed her like a trail of loose gravel as she stepped through the gate and onto the base proper. She didn't react, didn't slow, didn't roll her eyes. Her pace stayed smooth and steady as she walked past them, her gaze sweeping across the road, the guard tower, the transport trucks, the coastline peeking over the horizon. She saw everything, not with curiosity, not with interest, but with familiarity. With ownership, the breeze pushed strands of her hair across her face as she adjusted the weight of the duffel again. The base around her was waking up, diesel engines rumbling to life, sailors trotting between buildings with clipboards, early physical training groups jogging in formation around the far track. A seagull cried overhead, swooping low as if it, too, wanted a closer look at the stranger who blended in almost too well. A group of young sailors exiting the chow hall glanced her way. A few offered polite nods. One whispered something about her looking too calm for a new transfer. She didn't acknowledge them. She simply kept walking, footsteps steady against the asphalt, expression unreadable, because she wasn't here to socialize. She wasn't here to impress anyone. She wasn't here to be noticed, and she certainly wasn't the woman her badge claimed she was. Inside her duffel was a uniform wrapped in cloth to avoid wrinkles. Inside that uniform were the stars of a Rear Admiral, stars that would, by noon, be placed on her shoulders in full ceremony at Command Hall. Most of the people walking past her now would be standing at attention later, saluting her. But for this brief, precious morning, she walked the base unseen, studying it the way a chess master studies a new board before the first move. Every building, every guard, every vehicle, every blind corner. She mapped the rhythms, the weaknesses, and the pulse of the installation she would soon command. But for now, to them, she was just the new logistics girl. And she let them believe it, because sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one no one notices walking in. Rear Admiral Leah Monroe walked deeper into Naval Support Base Sentinel Harbor with the unhurried pace of someone who belonged there, yet had no desire to stand out. The wind had settled into a steady push at her back, guiding her across the open courtyard that stretched between the main gate and the administrative district. Morning sunlight finally broke through the haze, drifting over the base in thin gold ribbons that illuminated steel roofs, antenna arrays, and rows of barracks like a quiet awakening. Her boots clicked softly on the pavement, but the sound was swallowed by the growing noise of the base coming alive. Forklifts beeped in the distance. A forklift operator yelled at a junior sailor to watch the corners. Someone dropped a toolbox, followed by a colorful curse echoing across the motor pool. A group of sailors jogged past, formation tight, breath visible in the cold. Lee's eyes swept over everything, not with curiosity, not with surprise, with recognition. Sentinel Harbor had changed over the years. New buildings, new wiring, new security layouts. But the soul of the place was the same. A Navy base was a Navy base. Each one had the same heartbeat, the rhythm of routine, the hum of discipline, the thin veneer of order covering the chaos of running a military installation. A lieutenant nearly bumped into her as he came out of a side door, juggling a stack of reports and a breakfast burrito. "Oh, sorry, ma'am," he said automatically, not even looking up. "No harm done," Lee replied, her voice soft, even, not a hint of rank in her tone. The lieutenant rushed off, completely unaware he had just apologized to his new commanding officer. Lee watched him go, quietly amused. She wondered how long it would take for the rumor mill to catch up with reality later today. A pair of civilian contractors passed her next, discussing generator repairs. One of them eyed her duffel, another logistics hire. He whispered, thinking she couldn't hear. "Yeah," his buddy said, "they're flooding this place with them lately." Lee smiled faintly to herself. People saw what they expected to see. That was the beauty of anonymity. She reached the heart of the base, a wide courtyard surrounded by the operations building, the communications center, and the renovated intelligence wing. A massive American flag snapped crisply in the wind above her. She paused for a moment, not out of sentimentality, but out of habit. Years in the Navy trained you to always acknowledge your colors, whether anyone was watching or not. A group of Marines heading toward the training range slowed at the sight of her. One of them, all broad-shouldered, brimming with that distinct combination of confidence and caffeine, gave her a friendly nod. "You lost, ma'am?" he asked, his tone polite but amused. "No," she said simply, just observing. He didn't question it, didn't press. She had mastered the tone that ended conversations politely but firmly. The Marines walked on. Lee continued toward the administrative wing. The glass doors slid open with a soft hiss, releasing warm air tinged with the smell of printer ink and coffee. The interior was bustling, officers in crisp uniforms, civilians carrying binders, a petty officer loudly demanding why his requisition form had been sent back unsigned. She slipped through the chaos like a ghost. "Can I help you, ma'am?" asked an ensign at the front desk, barely glancing up from her computer. "Yes," Lee said. "Where is conference room A1 located?" The ensign pointed down the hall. "Second door on the left. Briefing in there this morning for the new admiral, whoever he is." Lee's eyebrow lifted just slightly. "He," she echoed softly. "Yes, ma'am. Rumors flying. They say he's got a reputation." Lee nodded, thanked her, and walked away. biting back a smile. She reached the designated room, but she didn't enter. Not yet. She had time before the official reveal, and she preferred to spend it gathering a full understanding of her new environment. There were details here others would overlook, details she couldn't afford to miss. As she moved through the corridors, she paid attention to everything: the placement of emergency equipment, the maintenance tags on the fire suppression system, the scuffed footprints leading toward the armory, the worn patches on the carpet near the intel office door where people clearly stood. Frequently, all indicators of traffic flow, priorities, and stress points. To an untrained observer, these were trivial. To a leader who had commanded combat units, coordinated joint operations, and managed crises others never heard about, they were louder than words. Finally, Lee stepped outside again, climbing the small slope overlooking the entire central courtyard. She stood there quietly, wind brushing past her, hoodie fluttering lightly behind her, watching the base she would soon command settle into its morning rhythm. No one there knew who she was. Not yet. For now, she was still just a face in the crowd, unseen and unremarkable, and she couldn't have asked for a better vantage point. By late morning, Naval Support Base Sentinel Harbor was fully awake. Trucks rumbled across the yard, boots thudded in practiced cadence, PA systems crackled with routine announcements, and the crisp scent of brewed coffee wafted from every office window. From the outside, it looked like any other day, ordinary, predictable, uneventful. But inside the administrative building, tension hummed beneath the surface like a live wire. Every senior officer, department head, division chief, and enlisted representative had been ordered to gather in command hall by 1,100. No one knew why. No one had details, not even the XO. That alone was enough to spark murmurs through every corridor. New CO coming, maybe. I heard the last one retired early. No. This is above replacement level stuff. Leah Monroe walked through these whispers, still in her jeans, hoodie, and boots, her duffel resting comfortably against her hip. The hallway leading to Command Hall was buzzing with officers adjusting their uniforms, rehearsing greetings, gossiping quietly. None of them so much as gave her a second look. A few assumed she was lost. One suggested she try the admin office for in-processing. She thanked him without correcting the assumption. Her anonymity wouldn't last much longer. At the double doors of Command Hall, she paused. Through the narrow glass window, she could see the bustling interior, rows of chairs filling quickly, sailors whispering, Marines sitting at rigid attention, chiefs clearing their throats with that signature mix of authority and irritation. The stage at the front of the room bore a single podium draped in navy blue cloth, flanked by two flags, the stars and stripes and the navy flag. Her seat, her place at that podium, waited in silence. She slipped inside quietly, unnoticed thanks to the crowd's preoccupation. No one paid attention to a woman in a hoodie slipping into an empty staff corridor beside the stage. She dropped her duffel onto a bench and unzipped it with slow, deliberate movements. Inside was her uniform. Not just any uniform, a Rear Admiral's service dress blues, perfectly pressed, the gold, threaded stars gleaming faintly even in the dim backstage light. She lifted the jacket with both hands, smoothing the sleeves, her expression calm but focused. She had worn these stars many times before, on deployment briefings, during crisis negotiations, in war rooms where the stakes carved decades of stress into hours. But each time she put them on, something inside her aligned, sharpened, settled. Responsibility, authority, history. She changed quickly, folding her civilian clothes neatly and placing them back into the duffel. When she slipped the jacket on and fastened the last button, she stood straighter. Taller, not because of vanity, but because command demanded posture, not just of the body, but of the mind. Rear Admiral Leah Monroe stepped into the light. The room erupted, not in applause, but in confusion. Conversations stuttered to silence, heads turned, a few officers began to rise instinctively, then faltered, unsure why they were reacting to a woman they had never seen before. Commander Hensley, seated in the front row, blinked hard. "Is that who is?" Chief Morgan whispered. "Is she supposed to be back here?" Then Lee reached the podium. The gold stars on her shoulders caught the overhead light. The room froze. Every sailor, every Marine, every officer in that hall went still. It was as if a wave rippled outward from her presence, pulling the air with it. Captain Rhodes, the Zoe, shot to his feet so fast his chair nearly toppled. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. At Admiral Monroe, Lee rested her hands lightly on the podium. "Good morning," she said, voice firm, calm, naturally commanding. That was all it took. The entire room surged to its feet in a thunderous, unified movement. Dozens of boots snapped together. Hundreds of hands shot to brows in crisp salutes. Even the Marines, none of whom saluted anyone lightly, held their posture with rigid respect. Her gaze swept the room, not judging, not measuring, simply acknowledging, at ease, she said. The crowd shifted into parade rest. Some still stared, wide-eyed, at the woman they had dismissed just hours earlier. Lee continued, "I arrived on base this morning in civilian attire for one reason, to see how Sentinel Harbor operates when nobody is watching." A few officers swallowed nervously. "And I saw honesty. I saw hard work. I saw good people doing their best to keep this installation running." Her tone softened, but I also saw assumptions and underestimation. Several Marines in the front row exchanged guilty looks. Lee rested her hands behind her back. "This base is now my responsibility, and I want every person here to understand one simple truth." The hall leaned in. "Respect isn't given because of stars or titles or ceremony. Respect is earned when you show people who you really are." She let the words hang in the still air. "And starting today, you'll see exactly who I am." Silence followed, thick, reverent, electric. Then Captain Rhodes, still pale, croaked out the only words he could manage. "Welcome to Sentinel Harbor, Admiral."